You've hired a contractor to remodel a bathroom for you. You're going to pay him $10,000 and he wants 50% of that upfront for the labor costs. You're also paying for supplies. Is this the best way to handle this? If not, how should you handle it? I'm going to answer this and all other questions regarding how to deal with contractors in real estate investing right now. My name is Rich from Rich on Money. First thing I want to talk about is how do you find different contractors? How do you find handyman, electricians, plumbers, all that? I'll tell you my favorite place personally. I'm a real estate investor, realtor, property manager here in Montgomery, Alabama, and there's a Real Estate Investment Association, REI, Facebook group and physical group that meets once a month. Great group of investors. This has been my go-to place to get recommendations on contractors. I'd recommend you do the same in your city. Google name of city, Real Estate Investment Association, real estate group. Maybe there's a Facebook group. Maybe they meet at a church. Maybe they meet in coffee shops. Find them. They're out there. That's whether you're living in that city or you're a long distance investor, but that's the city that your properties are in. When you're finding contractors, handymen, whatever it is, to do various jobs, you need to make sure they have some kind of presence. Hopefully there's some Google reviews for them. Maybe there's a Facebook page, or you hear something from other investors. Don't just let them be some random name off Craigslist that you've never heard of in your life. If we're going to do this right, you're going to be deducting the work that they do from your taxes. You have to handle it correctly. They have to be licensed. You want them to be bonded and insured. If they get hurt or screw something up, they've got to have some kind of insurance. Now you can Google this, but there's ways to check if contractors, HVAC, electricians have licenses. Google that for your city and state and look them up. When you find someone you want to use for whatever, a plumber, a handyman, even a roofer, it's best to try them out on small jobs. Hopefully you can do something like have a roofer fix a small leak on a roof. Have a plumber come fix a leak under the sink. Have them bid the job, do the job, see how it all goes, pay them. And if it's smooth, then you hire them for a more complicated job next time and you work your way up. And when it comes to the more expensive contractors, like a general contractor that might do a whole remodel for you, or someone that might paint your whole house or install a whole air conditioning system, you work up to that. If a job's really expensive, a lot of times it's smart to get more quotes. You don't need to ask 4 or 5 people to give you a quote on a $100 job, but you might want at least 3 on a $5,000 or $10,000 job. Someone's going to paint your whole house inside and out, get at least 3 quotes. Same with the roof. Same with putting hardwood floors in your whole house. You want to get quotes and compare them, as well as do the other things I talked about. Make sure they're legit, make sure there's some sort of connection to them, website reviews, referrals. Now we're going to talk about something tax related. I'm not going to go into tons of detail, but it's important for you to understand something called a W-9 and a 1099 NEC. A W-9 is a tax form that people fill out to give their business name or personal name, social security number or tax ID number, and address to you so that you can use that information to report how much money you paid them in an entire year. If any given contractor, any given person that's like an LLC, or someone that works for themselves, something smaller than a corporation, if you spend $600 on any one entity, and that could be like an HVAC person, a plumber, a handyman, an electrician, you need to fill out something called a 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation form, and send it to the IRS. What is that doing? It's making sure that the IRS knows that this particular contractor got paid by you. That way the IRS can get their taxes from that person. So you need to satisfy this legal requirement so that you can write off those expenses on your taxes. If you were ever to get audited, the IRS would check and make sure that you sent these 1099 NEC forms for every contractor that you spent more than $600 on in a calendar year. Sounds like a pain in the ass? It is, but you need to do it right so you don't get screwed if you get audited someday. So anytime you're dealing with a new contractor and you want to make sure they're legit, you're going to ask them to fill out this W-9 form. It's a form where they list their name, their tax ID number, their address, and they sign it. And basically they're saying, here's the information so that you can let the IRS know how much you paid me in a given year. You need to get this from them before they do a job for you. At the very least, before you actually pay them. Because some contractors are going to ask that you pay them in cash because they're trying to avoid paying taxes themselves. But the issue with this is they're asking you to do something illegal tax-wise, and you can get in trouble for it. And if you're going to pay them in cash, you should not write it off on your taxes. But you want that tax deduction, so get the W-9 from them. Now we're going to talk about how to structure payments to these contractors, be it a handyman or a roofer or whatever. There are more professional companies, something that has 10, 20, 30 employees. And then there's these one employee, two employees working in a business together. And there's a difference in how you pay them. Or a professional, larger company that has like several employees, that has like a secretary that takes the calls and that does the billing and all that stuff. It's all straightforward. Typically, they're going to come finish the work in a day or two or three. They're not going to ask for anything until they're done. And then they're going to send you an invoice and then you're going to pay it. Now, of course, you need to ask them for their W-9, and they're usually not going to have a problem with that. They're a bigger company. Remember, though, if they're a corporation, they don't have to do this. But if they're an LLC or a private contractor, they do need to do this. You do need to worry about these W-9s and these 1099s. Now, certain companies that you don't worry about 1099s with, big companies, Home Depot, Lowe's, Amazon, like big corporations. You don't mess around with it. It's just for the small contractors, the ones where the IRS wouldn't know if you paid them in cash. So professional companies are a little more straightforward. We're going to go back to my listener's initial question now. Let's say a job's going to take 2 weeks, $10,000 in labor and supplies for a bathroom. If your contractor's asking for 50% of labor up front, he's doing something he shouldn't be doing. By paying him half up front, you've killed his incentive to get it done quickly. Let me explain. Let's say you pay him that 50% up front, and then a week later, when he's 3/4 done, he asks for the rest. So you pay him the entire amount and he promises to come back the next day and finish everything up. He's 100% paid, but he has 25% of the work that isn't finished yet. What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong is he has no financial incentive to come back and finish the job. Certainly if he's tight for money, what's he going to do? Come and finish your job for no pay that day, or start a new job where he takes another 50% up front. You're killing his incentive to come finish. Your contractors won't do a very good job unless they know that when they come work for you, there's money to be made at the end of that day or week. If they can get you to pay ahead, they've done 25% of the work and you pay for 50%. They've done 50% and you pay for 75%. Once you pay ahead, they can back off, take that money, relax, and go work for somebody else and put you on the back burner. Another issue is when somebody's completely done with a job, but they have a couple small things that they haven't knocked out yet, and they ask for the full payment, you can't give them the full payment, and here's why. Once they have a full payment, why would they come back to take care of these small things for no pay? They're not incentivized to do. Let's say it's a $10,000 job. They got a couple things to come back for. Hold back $300 or whatever makes sense based on what's left. When you come back and finish that thing over there on the wall, then you get that $300. They're going to fight you on it. They're going to whine and complain, but they know that's right. So stick to your guns. When you're talking with a contractor about price and when you're going to pay, ask them how long the job's going to take. Obviously, you want to push them to give you a smaller time frame. They shouldn't take 2 weeks to do a very simple job, right? Or a month for something that should take a week. Once they've told you this is a 3-day job, that's less than a week, they shouldn't ask for any labor up front. When they finish that 3 days, you pay them for the whole job. Now, if they drag it out to a week or 2 weeks, you just remind them, hey, you said it's a 3-day job. When you're done, I'll pay you. Now, when we're talking about a more complicated job, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, what's a good way to break this up? A lot of times a good idea is to split it up to 25%, 50%, 75% finished job, or it could just be 50% finished job. A way that I work a lot with my contractors, as long as they're doing things fast enough, I tend to pay them on Fridays for the work that they've done. The labor that they've done that week, I pay them on a Friday. Why do I do this? Because a lot of times on these bigger jobs, your contractor will hire several people to come work for him. He needs money to pay his workers on Friday. So I pay him on Friday for the work he's finished. He pays his workers. Everybody's happy. They come back on Monday. They work until the following Friday and I pay them again. You never pay them ahead of the amount of work they've done. It's either slightly below or right at what they finished. That way they have an incentive to come back and finish the job. This is the secret to all this. What about supplies? Supplies can be tricky. Again, if a job is a 1, 2, or 3-day job and it's a more professional company, they're going to typically take care of the supplies themselves and bill you at the end. If it's a bigger job, or maybe and it's a smaller contractor, just a 1-man shop or a 2-man shop, they might want some kind of thing where you give them money for supplies. Maybe that's up front. I like them to purchase those supplies at Home Depot or Lowe's, and I pay with my credit card. I get the receipt, and they take that stuff to the job and do the work. Then I pay for labor in the way that we talked about, either some kind of identified 25, 50% finished, however you decide to do it, or pay them on Fridays for work finished. But when you see these landlords getting screwed over and talking about getting ripped off, it is almost always because they paid way ahead or up front for a big job, and then the person just left. You can avoid this by only paying for work that's been accomplished and being careful with supplies. You just want to watch out for that incentive. Maybe you're grabbing the supplies and making sure they get delivered to the job. Or if you've heard some things about this company and they've got some credibility, then maybe you can trust them for those pre-purchase of supplies. But again, don't pay them ahead on labor. That slows them down. Or the really shady ones, they'll just skip town with that money. Here's how I like to work with contractors. If you've listened to my earlier parts of my podcast or seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I'm all about texting, taking pictures, as opposed to talking and being somewhere in person. I think this is important for working with contractors. I like to work with contractors that are used to and good at taking pictures and taking videos of the work they're doing and the work that they've finished. Now, depending on how expensive, how important it is, at some point you'll go inspect it yourself, especially for a final payment. But on smaller jobs, I really like it when my handymen take pictures before and after of the work they're doing. A lot of times I'll even get tenants, if it's my rental property, I'll have a tenant take a picture of it and the tenant tell me, yeah, I like the work that they did, they're done, it's great. Or no, I don't think they're done yet, they screwed something up, I don't like this. You can use the tenant to follow up on that. Get the tenant's pictures as well. But I want to work with contractors that like and are okay with working by text, taking pictures, taking video. They're not trying to hide things, but they're open about it, open and cooperative. That makes my life easier. I like being able to do all this without showing up on people's jobs every day. And I've found that can work quite well with the right contractors that have the right work ethic. When you've got handyman or contractors that you like, and you ask them to come do small jobs, and they say they're going to come tomorrow to do something, or they're going to come Thursday to work on something, if you don't say anything to them again, and then they don't show up, don't get all pissed off. Oh my God, these contractors suck, they never show up. Set yourself reminders. If something is 2 or 3 days away, I'm going to remind them the day before, and I'm going to remind them the morning of. They tend to show up that way. These contractors, especially if they're any good, they get pulled in a lot of different directions. People are always calling them with last-minute emergencies. And if they hear nothing from you, it's easy for them to forget and run off and get taken by somebody else. But if you really follow up with them, really let them know, oh yeah, that's right. I said I was going to do this for Rich. Oh yeah, that's right. He reminded me again this morning. Much higher success rate. Again, they're scatterbrained, so help them out. What kind of contractor do I like? If a contractor is like brand new at their skill, brand new at working, they're not going to have a lot of skill. They're not going to know what they're doing. They're not going to know how to bill. I stay away from that. Conversely, let's say that they're a general contractor that does like construction. Once they've been doing it for many years, I tend to realize that they don't work with investors very well anymore. They decide, I'm going to work with people that'll pay a lot of money for my jobs, or maybe even people that are willing to overpay. Just see so many contractors, it'll be great for a long time, and then just decide, man, I'm just doing the work for people that are willing to pay a lot. And that doesn't work well for the average real estate investor who needs to keep his costs down. He can afford to pay a fair wage, but not an overpriced wage. Oh, I get a lot of hate for saying this, but it's true. Every contractor has an expiration date. This is so true. There's an expiration date stamped on a contractor, but here's the weird thing. You can't see the date. He doesn't know the date either, or she, but you'll be doing great with somebody, right? You've used them for 6 months, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years. All of a sudden, they're slacking off. All of a sudden, it appears they've stole from you. All of a sudden, they get super flaky, or they just disappear, or they go to jail. It happens. You're going to see, oh my gosh, I think this guy's expired. It's too bad. He's been great. Guess what? Cut the ties, find a new person. I want to go a little bit into specifics on some different types of contractors. Most of the things I've said have been about handymen or general contractors. Handymen are kind of jack of all trades, can do a little of everything. General contractors are more like they can do construction, they can do framing, they can remodel a bathroom, remodel a kitchen. Bigger, more important jobs for general contractor, simple things, handyman. What about like HVAC? HVAC is heating system, cooling system. Things to know about HVAC. An HVAC unit, this is very generic, but if an HVAC unit is 20 years old, it's old. 15 to 20 years, it's getting old. It could die soon. If it is less than that, let's try to repair that thing. It probably can last longer. If it's a lot less than that and they're trying to tell you you have to replace it, get a second opinion, because lots of times a bad HVAC person's going to have you replace something and a good one's going to get it fixed for $50 or $200. Just keep that in mind. What do I want to say about plumbers? When you've got these kind of simple leaks, stuff under a sink, right? Fixing or taking care of clogged drains, garbage disposal's messed up. A lot of times a handyman, a guy that just generally knows his stuff, charges, I don't know, $50 an hour, no crazy amount. A handyman can handle a lot of these simpler jobs. Toilet keeps running. But when you talk about something serious, something expensive, maybe it's a serious clog where it's really far down the line, or the problem is between the house and the street with sewer or water line, or you're remodeling a bathroom and you want to replace a lot of the plumbing or something. Then you're talking about getting a plumber, paying more, making sure they're licensed, getting quotes for expensive jobs. Electrician is the same thing. I like to talk about the electrician handyman trade-off. If you want to install lights, install chandeliers, ceiling fans, you probably can get a handyman to do this stuff. Make sure he's licensed, make sure he's insured, make sure he seems organized, decent guy. If you're talking about more issues of code, right? Issues of rules for electricity, for passing an inspection. Oh, we need to change something on this electric box or this GCFI outlet. This place doesn't have a GCFI outlet and it needs one. Things that are maybe could cause a fire if they're not done correctly. You want to hire an electrician, make sure he's licensed, get bids if it's expensive. But you don't need an electrician to change a light bulb. You don't need an electrician to put up a simple light fixture for you though. Painters. So you've got these general handymen, right? Do lots of different things. I tend to like to find people that just do painting. Maybe other property managers use them. You can always call property managers for recommendations if they're willing to give it out. Property managers use these painters. Other investors use them. You find them in a Facebook group. You look online for Google reviews. Make sure they're licensed. Make sure you get that W-9 from any of these contractors so you can report their earnings at the end of the year. And there's rules about this. You need to report these earnings on a 1099 NEC form by January 31st every year. Now, if you're painting one room, you don't need a lot of quotes for that. If you're painting the entire house or inside and outside a house, get several quotes. That could be a $10,000, $15,000 job. Roofers. Again, I like to talk about handyman versus true roofer. Something very important here. I don't like using a handyman for anything roof related, even just for fixing a leak. Why? Handymen tend to think they can use this, I forget what it's called, but they have some kind of a tar. They'll go up on the roof and they just paint some kind of a tar sealant thing, hoping to cover the area that's leaking, and that'll stop the leak for a year or two. That's a bad idea. A roofer, for a little more money, can correct that the right way. You may want to bring more shingles in and just fix that area. Sometimes there's a pipe coming up and the area around it isn't quite sealed correctly. You want to fix that correctly, not with just this sticky black stuff that dries and only lasts a few years. You want to find a good roofer that you get the sense will tell you the truth about. Yes, you can patch this. Yes, you can patch this. No, it's way too old. We might need to replace this roof. Get second opinions and third opinions, especially if you're a little nervous. This roof's only 10 years old. You're telling me to replace it. Roofs should last between 20 and 30 years. For me, the typical roof has been more like 30. I've seen them go longer. What's been your biggest challenge with contractors? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you like this, hit subscribe. I really love those reviews and I appreciate them. This is Rich on Money, signing off.